Hello friends, Tom Downey here for the Cowboys Report, and today I am joined by Brent Korobotic, the head risk manager over at BetDSI. We're going to talk a little Cowboys and the Falcons and how it relates on the betting lines. Brent, thank you so much for stopping by.
Thanks for having me on, Tom. Appreciate it.
Of course. Let's talk a little bit about this Cowboys-Falcons game. Two teams that are kind of polar opposites. The Cowboys have this great defense and an iffy offense. The Falcons have the great offense and the iffy defense. What are you expecting out of this game?
It's an interesting game now. Much more interesting, I think, now than it maybe would have been earlier on in the season. Atlanta went through that spell where they had a whole lot of injuries that they were dealing with on the the defensive side of things. They lost quite. I don't know if it's like how many games they lost right out of the bat, but I think it was like 4 out of 5 they lost or something like that. They turned it on with like 3 wins in a row. Now they had the big hiccup last week that I think really gonna nip them in the backside. I think that loss at Cleveland last week was a real shock. And the Cowboys too, the same kind of thing. They started out a little bit rough. They seem to be the alternating wins and losses and stuff like that. Coming out of the bye week, you kind of expected or really hoped for them to beat Tennessee, and they flopped in that game. And last week, beating Philadelphia was like, where did that come from based on what you saw the prior week? But I mean, Dallas, they seem like they can hang with anyone when they're on their game, and that was one of the cases. I mean, it was great for the sports books too. I just want to mention that was a fantastic win for the Cowboys. So we were all big Cowboys fans last week, and we got a game here now where they're on the road and they are a dog. Right now, I've got Atlanta as a -3, -120 favorite, up from the opener of -3. The total's gone from 47.5 up to 48.5 as well. So I mean, the number driving the total is basically just public money. What I've seen so far, a wager count of almost 4-1 favoring the over. Now, when I talk about the wager count, Tom, that's the actual individual number of bets I've taken on this game. So almost 4-1 favoring the over, which is quite a bit. Dallas, and again, the whole thing with them is how they play on the road, or how they haven't played that well. They are 1-4 on the road, and obviously home field is usually worth around 3 points in the NFL. And so basically, when you're looking at this number of -3, -120, is that if they played this game on a neutral field, Atlanta would be just basically a pick 'em, or maybe like a -1 point favorite. So it kind of reflects the how close these teams really are. But you're looking at Prescott, what he's done, in the recent weeks. Now that he seems like he's really got a good chemistry going with Amari Cooper, so that's been great for them. Obviously, Elliott has been fantastic running the ball. You look at that last week. I mean, he's a monster when he's on his game and with that offensive line. So there is kind of the opposites in terms of the defense and offense there. But I think Dallas's offense can kick it up a notch, whereas Atlanta's defense has been getting healthier lately. That was kind of the big knock against them earlier in the season. They were just decimated by defensive injuries. So looking at these two teams as well, I mean, just looking at their records, they're just obviously you got identical records here. So that's something that tells you right away how close these two teams are, and also the fact point differential. You look at the number of games these two teams have played. Dallas is a +10 in point differential. Atlanta's a -10. So really not a whole lot to choose between the two of these teams. There haven't been many blowouts this season that in either of these teams' individual games. So I do expect a tight affair, and the line reflects that as well. The betting action reflects that. Okay, my wager count on this game, it slightly favors Atlanta, meaning I've taken slightly more bets on Atlanta, but really it hasn't moved a whole lot so far. So we're in the range in terms of what we open with and where the number is right now. And again, it's just what Dallas team are you going to get, and is Atlanta's defense going to be getting better, and what happened last week to Atlanta? If that's the team that they really are, and if Dallas is the team that we saw last week, Dallas would probably win this game. But it's gonna that's why they play them on Sundays. And right now, again, the number 3 reflects that basically on a neutral field, this would be a pick 'em game, and I think that's kind of accurate.
All right, folks, you can get in on this action at chatsports.com/bet. We've got the best promo deal out there with BetDSI. It's promo code Cowboys120. Gets you a 120% deposit bonus. Put down $50. BetDSI will hook you up with an extra $60 to bet on if you use that promo code Cowboys120 at chatsports.com/bet. You kind of mentioned it just a little bit ago, Brent, the inconsistency of this Cowboys team. Is this a team that, at least especially for me personally, you want to almost avoid betting on because you don't know which team is going to show up on Sunday?
Well, that's the thing. If you knew that, you'd be in a great spot. I mean, they they beat the Giants, or they lose to, they started by losing to Carolina, then they beat the Giants, and they lose to Seattle, they beat Detroit, they lose to Houston, they beat Jacksonville. I mean, back and forth like that. It's like, who is this team? Now, I will say that, I mean, even though they lost that last game to Tennessee 2 weeks ago by 14, that was, a real back and forth kind of game. It was a very close game. And we also look at Tennessee, and you take a look at the teams that they've beat. I mean, Tennessee's probably, a better team than many people give them credit for. They are only, I'm going to say only sitting at 4-4. But in terms of their, their schedule and teams they've beaten, and they did beat Dallas, New England prior to that. They beat Philadelphia prior to that. They beat Jacksonville. So they've beaten some really good teams. It just seems like everyone in the NFL right now seems to be, ripe for a loss at any point in time. So yeah, you can kind of go crazy sometimes. I think that's why I say that. Looking at this number, I think it's just the right number in terms of what our function is and what we're trying to do with this number of 3 minus 120. We're trying to get the same amount of money bet on both teams, and it just seems to be the right thing to do. You look at the NFC East as well. I mean, there's real, the Cowboys at plus 325. That's, they're really not far out of it, and that reflecting that number, it gives them around like just over a 22% chance of winning that division. The Eagles are around 33% with the current price of plus 200. And Washington, minus 120. And now, Washington, I still, yes, they won last week, but I mean, that game last week against Tampa Bay for Washington, they are sitting at 6-3 and all that. I give them credit for winning the games that they've won, but I think they gave up close to 500 yards, and somehow Tampa Bay only scored 3 points. So, you're looking at Washington, they just seem like almost like a false favorite there. So I don't think anyone can really get behind Washington. And Philadelphia has been, had a tough time with defensive injuries, and I think it's getting even worse in terms of their defensive backfield this week. So the division is really still ripe, other than, as you see on the very bottom of the screen there, the sad sack Giants.
Absolutely, folks. You can bet on these NFC East odds right now on BetDSI. Head over to chatsports.com/bet and use promo code Cowboys120 for a 120% deposit bonus. Put down $50. They'll give you $60 to bet with on BetDSI if you use promo code Cowboys120 at chatsports.com/bet. Brent, thank you so much for stopping by, and we'll see you again next week.
Appreciate you having me on, Tom.